Now that we've gone over the taxonomy of plants, and we've learned the characteristics that make different types of plants different from one another, and we've gone over the adaptations for living on land in various groups of plants, we're now going to focus on the vascular plants and look at the structure, how that structure is related to function, and the growth patterns in plants. It's important to understand the hierarchical classification of cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems inside of a plant. It's especially important to learn this material since it will be applicable not only to Unit 2, but to Unit 3 as well. Whether you're talking about a plant or an animal, a tissue is a group of cells that consist of one or more cell types, and these cells always work together to perform a specialized function. An organ then consists of several types of tissues that work together to carry out particular functions. Plants have organs that are composed of different tissues, and each of those tissues are composed of several different cell types. Here's an example. We have a specialized cell, a root hair cell, with a specialized function. So that function is taking up water from the environment. The cell is well designed for this function because of the long, skinny extension that increases the surface area for taking up water. The root tissue is then composed of many root hair cells, although only one is visible in this diagram. If we showed a larger area of the root, we'd see more of these types of cells. Other cell types lack the extension of the root hair cell, and other cells, these long thin cells shown on the right-hand side, have a different size and shape than the root tissue cells found on the left. Together, these different cell types form a particular type of root tissue. Then several different types of tissues found in roots make up the organ known as a plant root. The plant root is part of the vascular tissue system in the plant. Okay, so the system, an organ system, consists of all or part of several different organs. The vascular system extends through the roots into the stem and also into the leaves. Together, many organ systems make up the organism, in this case, a tree. In this chapter, we'll be talking a lot about the structure and function of two major groups of flowering plants. They include the monocots, which get their name because they have one seed leaf, also known as a cotyledon, and the other group is the eudicots. They have two seed leaves or two cotyledons. If you've previously learned about monocots and dicots in another class, rest assured that the eudicots are the same as the dicots you've learned about before. For whatever reason, the textbook has recently changed the name, but thankfully it's similar enough that it should be pretty easy to remember. The structure of monocots and eudicots is very different. We can tell by looking at leaves, stems, roots, pollen, or flowers whether the plant species is a monocot or a dicot. This table here shows some of the major differences. We'll have a chance to explore these differences in greater detail in the lab that we're doing this week. Let's talk about the three basic plant organs: roots, stems, and leaves. The basic morphology or structure of vascular plants reflects their evolution. Okay, plants have evolved to be organisms that draw nutrients from below the ground and that use their above ground structures for photosynthesis. Plants take up water and minerals through the roots, which are found underground. They also take in carbon dioxide and collect light energy above the ground. These are the raw ingredients needed for photosynthesis: water, carbon dioxide, and light energy. Each of the plant organs, roots, stems, and leaves, are involved in obtaining the resources that the plant needs for photosynthesis and growth. We can divide the plant into the root system, that's the below ground portion of the plant, which includes all of the plant roots, whether they be the primary roots or the smaller secondary roots. Since this plant system is underground and it's not receiving any light energy, it's not capable of photosynthesis. So the root system relies upon sugars to be delivered from the above ground portion of the plant. The shoot system. The shoot system includes stems, leaves, and flowers if we're referring to a flowering plant. The shoot system doesn't absorb any water itself. Instead, water and minerals are transported from the root system that takes up these resources from the soil and transports them to the shoots. The primary function of the shoot system is photosynthesis. Reproduction is another function as well. Let's look in a little bit more detail at every particular plant organ. The root is an organ with an important function. It anchors the plant or keeps the plant in one place, and the deeper the root, the greater its ability to prevent the plant from tipping over. It also absorbs minerals and water and often stores carbohydrates. During certain times of the year, photosynthesis slows down or stops altogether. Therefore, having some sugars saved up from previous photosynthetic activity is very important. Many plants store this sugar in many parts of the plant. There are two primary types of roots. Most eudicots have what we call a taproot system. It has a main central root called a taproot that's a lot thicker and found in the center of the root system. Then it has lateral roots which branch off from the taproot. And these are much smaller and more slender. An extreme form of a taproot is a carrot. When we eat a carrot, the orange thing that we eat is actually the root of a plant. And it's very large and very thick, with very few, very tiny lateral roots. Monocots, on the other hand, have what we call a fibrous root system. So this consists of what we call adventitious roots. They arise from the stems. There are several of them that branch out in different directions, and most of the main roots that come directly from the stem are about the same size. We then have smaller lateral roots branching off from the adventitious roots, and these are the smaller lateral roots that increase the surface area for absorbing water and minerals. The next organ is a stem. The stem is the central portion of the plant that extends up from the soil. It's got a main stem, but then there are also alternating systems of nodes. These nodes are the points at which leaves and branching stems are attached. The internodes are the segments of stem in between the nodes. So the stem has an important function in stabilizing the plant. We need tough, strong material to help keep the plant upright so that it won't just flop or fall over above the ground. Stems also contain an apical bud, also known as a terminal bud. This is the bud located near the tip of the stem, also called a shoot. The apical bud is responsible for the elongation of the developing stem. Axillary buds, in contrast, are located in the angles formed by the leaves and the stems. So anywhere there's a junction between a leaf and a stem, these have the ability to form a lateral branch or even a thorn or a flower depending upon the plant species. Often these axillary buds are dormant. But one way to stimulate their growth and their branching off to the side is to trim the apical bud. So horticulturists and gardeners have a lot of fun with pruning plants and tricking them to grow in various different ways. Although supporting the plant and providing a structure for leaves to grow from is the primary purpose of most stems, some plants have modified stems with other unusual functions. A rhizome is a type of underground stem which is thickened and runs horizontally under the ground rather than vertically up and down. Often these rhizomes are involved in asexual reproduction. They can extend up throughout the soil somewhere else, and a new plant can grow from that. We also have above ground stems that grow laterally or sideways or horizontally. Okay, those are all ways of saying the same thing. These types of roots are called stolons. They're common in plants like strawberries, and they're also involved in asexual reproduction. The stolons extending away from the strawberries can then grow new leaves and new roots and form a new strawberry plant. Other stems grow underground and are involved in storing nutritious material, including sugars, for future use. The potato is an example of a tuber, a thickened underground stem that stores sugars in the form of starches. The third plant organ that we'll learn about is the leaf. Okay? So please don't forget that roots, stems, and leaves are the primary plant organs. The leaf is the organ that's primarily responsible for photosynthesis in most vascular plants. Leaves do have other functions. Some of them are involved in gas exchange. Some of them help dissipate heat. They can also be involved in defense. For example, the spines on the cactus are highly modified leaves that help protect the plant from herbivores that might want to eat it. Most leaves consist of a flattened blade, that's the sort of stemmy structure at the base of the leaf. Most leaves consist of a flattened blade. Okay? That's the structure that's involved in capturing energy for photosynthesis. Attached to that blade is a stalk or stemmy-like structure called the petiole. It's involved in attaching the leaf to the stem or branch. Just like we have tubers, which are underground stems that are involved in storing food and materials for later, we can also have modified leaves for the same function. The onion is an example of this. The layers of the onions are leaves involved in storing sugars and other materials for later use. We also have special leaves that are involved in reproduction. These reproductive leaves have the ability to break off, grow new roots and stems, and become a whole new plant. Other leaves, called tendrils, are involved in gripping and providing structural support for various plants, particularly vines. They essentially wind themselves around another plant or a wall or some other structure and allow the plant to reach a higher height where more light may be available. When we look at the leaves of monocots and eudicots, we notice that the veins are arranged very differently. Okay? Veins are part of the vascular tissue and they run through the leaves. Okay? They need to deliver water and minerals that came up from the root system And they also need to transport the sugars that the leaf produces back to the other parts of the plant. If we're looking at a monocot leaf, we generally see veins that run parallel or next to one another. In contrast, most eudicots have a branching pattern of veins. So we have a few large veins running throughout the leaf and smaller veins branching off the sides of those bigger ones.